Further discuss this with Hassan El-Tayyab. He joins me live from Washington, D.C. He's the Legislative Director for Middle East Policy at Friends Committee on National Legislation. Thank you for being with us on the program. Now, the impact of these attacks, they continue to become more profound by the day, which would surely impact the humanitarian situation on the ground. What are your thoughts?
Well, thank you so much for having me on. This is just the latest escalation of violence in a region wrought with so much pain and so much suffering. These attacks on Yemen's civilian infrastructure, including Sanaa Airport, Hudaida Port, several energy stations, will likely not degrade Houthi military capacity, but it could have significant impacts on the humanitarian situation for millions of Yemenis who have really suffered tremendously under almost a decade of war and siege with the Saudi onslaught backed by the United States. The Hudaida port attacks in particular could have significant consequences for a region experiencing a crisis. Hunger, famine, currently 18 million Yemenis rely on food assistance for survival, including 8 million children. 4.5 million are internally displaced due to the fighting. And again, as your previous analyst said, over 80% of Yemen's aid passes through the key port of Hudaida that Israel attacked today. And Human Rights Watch said that Israel's strike on Hudaida port back in July was a possible war crime. And I would suspect that the latest attacks on both Hudaida port and Sanaa Airport, where a lot of Yemenis use that port for travel, may also be deemed a possible war crime. And, this latest round of violence continues a longstanding pattern of Israel using U.S. weapons and military support to bomb civilians and civilian infrastructure. And what we know is that there's no military solution to this crisis, only a diplomatic one that really addresses root causes of violence. And what we need more right now, more than ever, is a ceasefire deal in Gaza and regional de-escalation in the Red Sea and Yemen.
Let's talk about that a bit, a potential diplomatic solution, the role that the United States would potentially play in that diplomacy, and if that is key in ending these tit-for-tat attacks.
Yeah, there's so much history here, but the Biden administration in the recent months have really said that it wants de-escalation. But I think its actions are showing that it's doing everything but seeking regional de-escalation, including its own recent strikes on Yemen, providing the intelligence and military support for Israeli forces bombing Yemen, and really greenlighting hundreds of millions of dollars in new weapon sales to Israel just in the past month. And I think U.S. policymakers who are really serious about de-escalation, they, one, need to stop sending offensive weapons to the Israeli government, use its leverage to bolster diplomacy to reach the ceasefire in Gaza, get the hostage deal done, as over 70% of Israeli citizens now want the hostage deal done immediately. And I'll also add that recent strikes by the United States in Yemen also come under increasing scrutiny, with U.S. lawmakers raising alarm bells about the constitutionality of these attacks due to the lack of congressional authorization. So again, I think U.S. lawmakers likely going to come from possibly a bipartisan coalition in Congress that wants to rein this in. I work in the United States in Washington, D.C. That's what we do. We try to get these coalitions together to try to rein in U.S. military support for the Israeli government and these unconstitutional strikes going on both in Gaza, in Lebanon, going on in Syria, and now Yemen as well. So there's a lot of work to do. I feel so much for the Yemeni people as they've been suffering through so much. And what's clear is that these attacks by the Israeli government on civilian infrastructure are not going to address Red Sea shipping issues, are not going to stop Houthi aggression against targets in Israel as well. So we need to get everyone back to the diplomacy table, and that starts with the United States using its leverage with the Israeli government.
Indeed. Hassan El-Tayyab, thank you so much for being with us here on TRT World and sharing that analysis with us.